But this is Hello everybody. This is Kavita Menon. I am a registered investment advisor and founder of Probitus Wealth. And today we are having a chat with Mriidul Jalan, dear friend, ex RIA, fellow RIA. He is from IIM Calcutta 2005 batch with over 30 years of experience as an equity analyst in institutional equity sales, and now as a fund manager with StAG, which is a category 3 AIA focused on India, focused on large cap strategies. And it's always a pleasure to chat up with you, Mridul. Today we are going to talk about the Indian IT sector, and I'm going to pick your brains on what's your view about this sector going forward. Over to you, Mridul. Please.
Hello, Kavita. Thank you for a very polite, nice introduction. Trust me, the pleasure is mine whenever we speak because intellectual discussion is something which sharpens the brain of everybody, including me also. Hello to the audience. Warm welcome. Uh, me and Kavita thought that let's talk about the Indian IT sector. And I said, while we are discussing, let's try and record in this era of social media, in this era of YouTube talks and podcasts and everything, we both are trying to probably come and game with these youngsters. I think I have nearly 3 decades of experience. This era has for people who are lower than the age of my experience, but yes, part of our learning curve in life. So a warm welcome to everybody. Me and Kavita thought that let's discuss about a very important sector, IT sector. StAG came out with a report recently, which can be available to you on our Twitter handle, and you can check out what we wrote on the IT sector. So, Kavita, I will brief about how Senora thinks, and that is the divine reason of our view on IT sector. That's the foundation of a view on anything which we do. So, first of all, we are a pure large cap fund. When I say a pure large cap fund, means we do not look at stocks below 25, 30,000 crore of market cap only. And within that also, we are very pick and choosy because we are purely focused on earnings. For us, the world revolves around earnings. If we get the earnings right, then the price will fall in place. But getting the earning right in the short term is not the key. The getting the earning right in the long term is more important because most of our clients, most of our audience will actually invest in equities to create wealth, and wealth creation doesn't happen overnight. It's a long process. I actually say that equity investment and is like a plant to keep giving water every period of time, and hence you have to think long term. And in the long term, the only thing sustain, according to my experience of so long, has been earnings and assuming that quality is there. So for us, everything revolves around earnings. We are happy to lose a bit of upsides in the short term because we don't. If there is no earning, then the upsides will not sustain or will not continue. So whatever is my view is purely long term and earning driven. Please do not consider it as a short term view. That's my first and most important disclaimer. So, Kavita, over to you. How do you want to start us?
From the basics, Mridul, uh, the first question anybody who's looking at the sector would want to know is what's the big difference between the IT Indian companies in India versus those which are listed overseas, especially the top five companies in the US, your NASDAQ companies? They are huge in size as compared to even the largest companies here. So, what is the most important difference between their business models, and why is it that valuation wise there seems to be a big gap between these two?
So, very nice point you highlighted, Kavita. Please understand that the first thing is the whole IT is painted with the same brush. It's a vast sector. It's like ocean in itself. Now, what are the key businesses of Indian IT? Let me explain that first because that is close to our heart perspective and close to the soul also. Is it's called execution, which means you do coding, you execute the plan which is being created. which is you code, I need a solution. The solution is designed by somebody else. I only do the coding and execute that. The second part is maintenance. Companies, most of the Indian companies have something called IMS, Infrastructure Management Service, where they manage the software, the hardware, and everything related to their clients. Some of the very smaller companies have started becoming specialists and started doing some of the R&D around their sectors. But I will say most of the companies do not do R&D in India. Digital marketing is another important parameter, which they do iCloud storage and all that services. So Indian IT companies is more about execution and services. Very few are product companies. They even in product, they kind of tie up with the bigger guys and they market and distribute the product and maintain the product. In a layman's language, I have I have bought a software from X, and if I have to use that software, I have to pay AMC to X, which could be very high number. So X does a tie-up with a small Indian company or a large Indian company and say that you do the maintenance with a lower employee cost for all my clients. So the cream is not done by the Indian IT company. Whereas the top five, the magnificent of the US, they spend a lot on R&D. They are into developments. They are trying to do something which is unique. They are trying to do something which we call value add in our system. They create products. Okay. Example, Netflix. It's trading at such a premium to Indian broadcasting because they have created a platform. And with that platform, they are getting so much money which they are investing in buying content. So they are doing the value added part, right? Google, we have become you can say a, a slave of the Google things, right? Because they've created unique things. In equities, the valuation we all know gets only for uniqueness.
Very
So
true.
if you do not have uniqueness, you will not get valuation. So the vast difference in valuation is rightly so between India and US IT. Because US IT में जो बड़े हैं, they bigger with their uniqueness. Netflix has a uniqueness, Microsoft has a uniqueness, Google has a uniqueness, Apple has a right. Competition don't even come close to them. And that is why not only they get premium valuation, the numbers are staggering. The kind of profitability they make, the kind of margins they make, the kind of revenue growth they deliver is staggering. So Indians are good at something. Indian IT is definitely good at something, but they are not of the same level.
If that is the case, Mridul, then what is it that drives a service sector that you're talking about as Indian IT? Because you're primarily looking at services that. So
They
what
are
are the important drivers of growth and revenue for IT, Indian IT?
so please understand that Indian IT is the backbone for all of these guys. To do any core business, like in our business, operations is our back, right? They do a value add, but their value add can't be the same as somebody who does a portfolio management or does bring clients on the board. It doesn't take anything away from them, but necessity, they are necessity, but they will not get the same pay scale, same valuation as a sales guy or a fund manager. That's Indian IT is the operation in our business in an analogy term. The key points which they do is they take care of that once you are in the field, which is once the product is made and the product is working, it should work smoothly. All the support needed to run it smoothly, all the glitches, IT uses the word glitch a lot, glitches are taken care by the web. You need a large team to do that. You need awareness to do that. You need experience to do that. And Indians are trained for that. I think in terms of attention to detail, in terms of ability to solve problems, Indians are better. And because of the purchasing power parity, cost of living, Indian IT employees come at a much cheaper to a US employee or any global part, even from a real estate perspective, which is why the ramp up has happened. So it's a critical role, and Indian IT is paid fairly well for that. But to expect them to to be a growth parameter is where I disagree with the general market thesis. I believe it's more of a maintenance work, and hence you will not get deliverables like a growth company. That for me is a bigger perception versus reality.
So what does their revenue depend on? Do they depend on the growth in the companies that are giving them those contracts, and businesses are coming from overseas, let's say. So their growth depends on how well their customers are doing, isn't it?
A lot, but that's not the only parameter. So let me put, let's say, what are the parameters? So first, you have very rightly pointed out that what is the growth of the company? Because once these companies grow, their IT needs will increase. They will spend more on these softwares, innovation, and they will depend on the Indian IT companies to execute that part of it, right? If you remember, over the last 10 years, we have stopped happening over in the recent past, but Wipro, Infosys, all these companies have bought a lot of in-house IT of large corporates because they've realized that putting a team across to do that is not their role. These guys do a lot of tie-up with Intels of the world and everybody to take care of the execution part of the product, right? So the demand comes because of the corporate growth of their clients, but it doesn't work purely on that. When you do an execution kind of a work, or when you do a digital marketing kind of a work, or a cloud storage kind of a work, all of these, the units matter, the underlying unit. So underlying units is your employees. So your revenue growth, while it is dependent on the corporate spending, it's heavily also dependent on your ability to hire. So once COVID came, we saw a huge hiring spree, and they hired because the business grew. Now, as moderation happens because of the US economy and everything, the demand has slowed down. So the biggest parameter we see is the employee addition for all IT companies have come down. Give me a second.
So clearly, there is a risk in this business also, from
The
both
biggest
sides.
benefit for these guys has not been because of the growth or the pricing power. It is to do with the currency.
Ah, yes.
Over the last 10 years, Indian currency has depreciated by more than 25%. We were at early 60s when Raghuram Rajan came in, or late 60s. We are today at mid 80s. While their margins of profitability have not grown within that direction because most of it get passed on, which clearly means the sector doesn't have pricing power with their clients. The average inflation in India, where most of the employees are, is 7-8%. We don't see that kind of price growth in their revenue side.
Also, clearly, other than TCS, the most of the larger IT companies have shown very little earnings growth in the last decade, in fact, for the longest period of time. Is this correct? And how has
Just
TCS managed it?
just to give you a perspective, and this is for me a very interesting perspective when I wrote my report. It's quoted in my report also. So over the last 8 years, uh, TCS revenue has, and both TCS and Infosys, by the way, their revenue have grown by 3x. Their revenue CAGR is around 12.5%. While their employee count has doubled, which means a CAGR of around 8%, which means your pricing growth has been 5% per annum, right? Now, that is lower than the average inflation, which means that it should have led to a margin dilution. While a bit of margin dilution has happened, it has got arrested because of the depreciation in the currency. So if we do that part of it, you will realize that these companies actually are working on declining gross margin. In typically a typical IT क्या होता है? You hire a resource or an employee at, let's say, $70 per hour, and you quote his services to the company at 100, $120 per hour. The gap is the money you are making to meet your OPEX, to meet your setup, your cost of acquisition of client and stuff in a very layman language. Similarly, cloud storage, you do, or data center, you pay stuff and you charge a bit higher. It's like cost plus kind of a model. So, and because there is no uniqueness in service, you do not have pricing power. So the growth looks good on paper, but it is not exciting. It made a lot of sense a decade back, Kavita, because I think a decade back Indian economy itself was growing at 5-6%. If you use the multiplier, the Nifty earning was growing at 11-12%. So IT was giving you a similar earning with a better cash flow, better visibility. But today, where I see 20% earning growth on Nifty and Indian economy growing at 7-8%, I don't see a reason why we should be invested in IT, and
But
especially at these
Mriidul,
multiples.
I know you're a large cap analyst and you love large caps, but there has been significant earnings growth visibility in mid and small cap IT sector. A lot of companies there have given phenomenal run up, not only in their stock prices, but also after a very long lull. Of course, we know that the decade before the 2020 COVID was not very great for IT. But after that, they not only have they gone up in terms of price, but even earnings have been stupendous. What caused this, sudden run up?
So big two things. One, the scale for these smaller and mid cap and small cap companies are much lower compared to the large cap, and hence when they grow, because of the lower base, the growth is very fast and very. I think a lot of mid cap companies realize that monotonous work or execution related work, they can't compete with the larger guys. So they identified their space of comfort and focused on. So for example, let's say NSC gives a mandate that I need to rehaul my IT before the IPO, a theoretical case, and it will put out a tender in our typical old fashioned method. While a Infi and a TCS will want to get the whole pie, or a CTS or Accenture for that matter, a typical small and mid cap company will want a very small pie of it, saying that we are really good at it. Maybe our products are good at it. And we will only do this, but we'll do much better than the peers on. And hence, because they are focusing on something which they are specializing in, they have a pricing power. And hence their growth and margins are better than a generalist. So some of the IT companies in India, for the good, decided to take that bold call. So the other day I was looking at KPIT and I was amazed with the kind of return investors have made in it. And when I looked at the numbers, I was equally amazed with the earnings growth it came. Right? The problem is, and especially at my end, is we are a very small team and we want to do a lot of focus work. You need to look at 15 companies at least to find one company. And then whether that company will be successful and able to do that, what you expect, is even more probabilistic. So for all the efforts you do to find one KPIT kind of a thing, it's better you will get it as a holistic in some places. So where people are specialists and good at it, they are the ones who should be doing it. We strongly believe that.
Sure.
We don't have the I will say the bandwidth more than anything else to try and look at 15, 20 companies and then find one.
Okay. So, but there has been a lot of product related innovation that is coming in from the smaller space. In fact, just sharing with you, even in the private equity space, a lot of investments are going into IT products, and we are no longer that service provider factory, especially in very small niches. Entrepreneurs are making inroad and
Yes,
creating
agree.
products which are very interesting using AI. That's become the latest, big word. But AI hai, data science hai, so many, products which are specific to certain industries, very small niches, but very important for them, in the same way, their products. And I guess we'll see a lot of innovation in this smaller space in the coming
We
years.
definitely are seeing that. But there are two things, Savita. And again, I'm talking as an investor. Please understand. I am not, as an investor, what do I want? I want scale and
Yes.
I want sustainable growth.
Yeah.
I will give you an analogy to another sunrise sector, which was 15 years back, a sunrise sector in India. MFIs, microfinance.
Yes.
Okay. Microfinance was said to be the backbone of the economic growth and stuff, rightly so. But beyond the point, एक स्केल के बाद धंधे को नेक्स्ट स्केल पे ले जाना हर कोई के लिए पॉसिबल नहीं है. ठीक है. I fear the same challenge across all sectors, not only in IT. I don't want to demean or demotivate anybody, but to take the business to a scale where I can say that my investment will be a multi-bag is a different game altogether. Indian MFI has done a great support to the economy, but not to the investors, right? So that is where it is. Minority का पैसा कब बनेगा? Emotion नहीं बनना है, right? So when I am managing somebody's money, my job is to make money out of it. I am not a social impact investor. If I was one, I will support every entrepreneur I can.
Well said. Well said, Mridu. Well said. So tell me, if I had to, just in a summary, understand what is your outlook for this sector in the coming years, and how do you view this sector in the coming years for
So first of
investors?
all, I am bearish from an investor perspective. I'm not bearish from a company perspective. Please understand. My view is as an equity investor, मेरा क्या हो?
Bilkul.
ठीक है. I am not saying the Indian IT companies will not grow or they are dying tomorrow. I am not making those type of statements. Going by what they have been in the past and what they have been doing off late, I don't. This this sector is heavily dependent on US economy, right? While the share of non-US or the rest of the world, as they call it, Europe, US, and rest of the world, where India becomes a good part of it also. The rest of the world continues to grow because those economies are doing better than Europe and US. Europe is known to the world and their share is coming down. Right? I will not repeat the obvious there. US economy is going through a huge turmoil, going through a huge structural changes because of whatever has happened. And if tomorrow the new president, whosoever it is, because of the pressure from Fed, decide that I need to bring down the debt, which is contract the balance sheet, then the corporate spending will even more come down. Indian IT sector depends heavily on that. If the corporate spending doesn't increase, these guys will not able to grow their business. The the Me Too business doesn't have pricing power. The second part, which is worrisome, is the fact that AI will take away a lot of admin jobs away. That's what I read. Unfortunately, most of the IT jobs are done in that. Once the automation happens, when the artificial intelligence comes, the corporates will rather pay a one-time cost to buy and engage in AI rather than paying a recurring per hour to a IMS employee. Right. So these employee counts will come down. They will have to use. They will become more like AI executors, is what I believe. So AI will reject their business model in a lot of sense. The third, which is my biggest risk, is if Mr. Trump comes back. While he was going out, he had raised questions on the H-1B visa, the minimum pay salary, because there was a huge gap between the Indians who are paid there and the US. If he revives those agenda, if and once he comes back, Indian IT margins are again going for a toss. Now, with that, my biggest concern, which is I think I'm slightly contra there. I believe over the next 10 years, Indian rupee will appreciate a lot. I will go back and talk about a very small phase back in 2006 7. There was a phase when Indian rupee had appreciated from 39 to 36. I was in ambit that time. And trust me, I will not quote the name of the company because I'm not right. I don't have the right to do that. But when I spoke to the CFO of one of the IT companies, one of the things which came out is that if rupee comes to 32, we will become a zero profitable company.
So
So
that's a
a
huge
10%
impact. Their
appreciation.
margins are so low anyways.
Yes, hedging ये सब होता है, but अगर rupee appreciate करेगा, these guys will not give revenue growth.
Especially if that becomes a trend. Mridul, why do you think the rupee will strengthen in the coming years?
Indian economy,
Hmm.
it is the shining star. Look at the world, and you will see one place where there is stability, geopolitical policies, stability is India. India's economic growth number is bigger than any of the countries. And it is not because of the government policy, it is because of the demography. Our average median age today is 28.5 years. जब हम इतने बड़े थे तो हम दौड़ते थे, हमें ग्रोथ फोकस होते थे. So the average Indian is growth focused. They will grow. The demography will lead your growth. And once your per capita income comes, your consumption will lead to the next rate of the growth. And which is where the corporate capex will come into India. It's a whole chain. And this chain is getting kick started because of the right policies and the right stability which is there in Indian economy, which is struggling with all the other countries for some reason or other. Either age, either policy, or geopolitical, something or other is pulling them back while India is continuing to grow naturally.
So, is it looking like a trend that a lot of companies will look at India focused businesses rather than looking overseas to
They are
hedge
already
their
doing
risk?
that. They are already doing that. Companies are the biggest companies of the world have realized that they need to come to India. I will tell you, Kavita, you will relate to it. There was a phase which is called the golden phase of Indian economy between 2003 to 2007. जब वो क्वाड्रिलेटरल बनाया था बीजेपी ने, रोड इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर पे पैसा खर्चा किया था, उस समय इंडिया 8-10% ग्रो करने लगा था. अपन को लगा था कि वी विल कंटिन्यू टू डू दैट. आई एम मेकिंग अ आई actually believe that that was just a trailer of what is going to come in the next 10 years. And when the bandwagon moves, everybody wants to jump on. And
Yeah, yeah,
hence
and
the
that
chain,
fuels the next. Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
exactly.
true that.
So India is entering that phase as an economy. Yes,
So it's
a lot of work will happen in IT in India also. I'm not saying that. Please understand, I'm not saying they will not grow. I'm saying they will not make money.
and as investors, then yes, that's the most important. That's the moot point.
Now let me ask you a very simple question, Kavita. You are an asset allocator, right? You have been close to equities yourself, right? When Nifty is trading is growing at 20% per annum on the earnings, and IT is growing at 10% per annum earnings. For all the cash flow, for everything, should IT trade at a higher multiple to index? The answer is no. TCS is 30 times TTM. Nifty is 23 times TTM. Where is the scope to re-rate? There is no scope to re-rate. And if the earning growth is only going to be 10-12%, why will I buy it?
You think there will be a reversal to mean sooner
So
than later?
so my again 10 year of history, right? Last 10 years is a fair assumption when I talk about. IT doesn't correct more than 10-15%. That is why they are called safe. Okay. But they will go through a strong time correction. That has been the case that they will go through price and a time correction. A lot of value for a 20% correction, and so-called value investors will come and start buying it because FCA field है, dividend है, buyback आता रहता है. So they will not go. They will not be beyond. So I call anything more than 15% as a knee-jerk. I don't see a knee-jerk correction. But investor का पैसा नहीं बनेगा. अपन लॉन्ग ओनली वाले हैं. अपन को पैसा बनाना है, पैसा बचाना नहीं है. बचाना होता तो FD बैलेंस फंड है. आप there are products you can recommend, right? Your clients, my clients will invest in equities only because they want growth and return. So while there is stability, while there is, that's why they're called defensive, right? You will not lose big, but you are not investing not to lose big. And especially in a growing economy, why will I invest in defensives?
Okay, Mridul, this was great. Is there anything else that I have missed asking? I'm quite uh, full now. My head is full of all your gyan, and I'm really happy with all the insights you've given. Um,
I,
is there
I think
anything you want to add?
I think we have covered most of the thing. I will say only one thing: come back as 30 years, be be any successful investors globally or in India. Mr. Late Mr. Rakesh Jhunjhunwala. He is known to make multi-baggers. Okay. All those companies, all those successful case studies has happened because the earning growth has been right. कोई प्राइस देख के पैसा नहीं डालता. सब earnings देख के पैसा डालते. All successful people will talk about businesses, will talk about earnings. Unfortunately, the regency bias is about price. Just because IT has run up 10% since the result, they are not good. Because I don't invest in equities to make 10%, in 15%. I invest in equities to double my money in 3.5 years. And I don't see IT doing that because I don't see the earnings in that. So the only gyan which I end up giving every time is please focus on structural earnings and not prices. Price is the result of earnings and not vice versa.
I've always taken that from you, Mridul. In every meeting that we have had, you've always said price will follow earnings, and your performance has always shown, and your conviction has shown that this is true. Uh, I think
Thank you.
so. Best of luck. I hope you don't buy any IT for the next few years in your fund also.
I will only buy when I see a structural earnings change. Trust me.
What do you think can cause that? A structural change? Is that something you
I,
think?
I, I
What
event like
can
COVID.
cause it?
Event like COVID,
Okay.
where people realize the need for virtual infra more and everybody rushes for it. That's when you have the pricing power because the people they are the resources are limited. So that same guy who is doing the coding will can be sold. His services can be sold at $130 per hour instead of 110 per hour. And if there's a need, then people will pay that extra.
Is there competition for this segment from all these other Southeast Asian countries? Because I've read so many news articles that they're looking at other
I
outsourcing
I
centers
am not
around the globe.
too worried about that, to be honest, because please understand that execution is a very critical aspect of any business, right? Operations is a very important aspect for our business. Let's say you have X in your operation team, right? Who is experienced 5 years with you. Let's say you pay X per month to that person. Tomorrow, if somebody comes even at 0.5x, you will not give your critical work to that guy. You will not want to save that 0.5x because the cost of an error could be much high to your business. So that is where the Indian IT is very critical. And Indians, these companies have experience of doing large scale projects.
Then why not pricing power? If you're that good, then such business should command pricing power also.
So two reasons. First, the the services are commoditized. Commoditized business में services में कभी pricing power नहीं रहता है. Let me talk about MF example. Does a MF which gives much better return than the other MF. Can they charge much higher AMC compared to the other MF? Because
But that is
commoditized
regulation.
businesses.
That's no, I think that is because of regulation more than anything
Okay,
else.
they can put exit loads, right? That is within the regulation. They don't do that. They don't try to improve the yield because it's a commodity business. And there's a fierce competition that if I try to charge extra, the other guy will take away my business. Telecom, one example. Idea is bleeding. They need to improve, increase the price. And if they can, technically, they will say, we will give you better services with extra price. But most of the customers will move to Jio or Bharti, right? So when there's a business which is commoditized in nature, you don't have price. And that's Indian IT. They are critical, they are important, they are value added, but it's commoditized.
Okay, brother. Thank you so much. Such an
Thank you,
insightful
Kavita.
session and
It's
always lovely,
wonderful
lovely
talking to
talking.
you.
Same
Thank
here.
you, guys. This was our first attempt to record something which we do on a regular basis. Hope you guys like it. Happy to hear feedback around it. Thank you.
Thank you, brother.